Jesus is not Zeus. He was a sinless man, not a sinless Superman. He woke up with bedhead. He had pimples at 13. He never would have appeared on the cover of Men's Health. He came as a normal man to normal men. He knows what it is to be thirsty, hungry, despised, rejected, scorned, shamed, embarrassed, abandoned, misunderstood, falsely accused, suffocated, tortured, and killed. He knows what it is to be lonely. His friends abandoned him when he needed them most. Had he lived today, every last Twitter follower and Facebook friend would have unfriended him when he turned 33. He who will never unfriend us.
A kindred spirit, as far as the east is from the west, next on So What? Therefore, since we have a great high priest who has gone through the heavens, Jesus, the Son of God, let us hold firmly to the faith we profess. For we do not have a high priest who is unable to sympathize with our weaknesses, but we have one who has been tempted in every way just as we are, yet was without sin. Let us then approach the throne of grace with confidence, so that we may receive mercy and find grace to help us in our time of need. Hi, I'm Chris Dorman.
And I'm Don Waite, man.
Welcome back to So What. Great way to begin. Hebrews, we're continuing our series as far as the east is from the west. What has God done with our sin in Christ that we know that we can approach the throne of grace with confidence? We spent a long time looking at the implications of the cross, and in the last couple of weeks we've been looking at the heart of Christ towards us, his children, those saints who still sin. And how we struggle with that, and our feelings about that, and what we struggle with thinking what God feels or what Jesus feels when we fail, and how we don't approach the throne of grace with confidence as we struggle with thinking maybe we're not welcome.
We kind of shrink back in the corner, and we might peek around a corner if we're so bold enough to see that the throne of grace is over there. But boy, we don't think we can approach it, let alone have boldness in going. Right. Because again, we're so aware of our dirtiness and our sinfulness, and we don't believe the gospel that he's actually dealt with it. Right. But beyond that, and we've went to great lengths, Chris, over many, many weeks to talk in all the different colorful ways that the scriptures use about how God has dealt with his sin. But then we've kind of moved into a different arena, and now we're talking about Jesus and how he responds to us in our mess, in our brokenness. And that, that verse right there, the set of verses in Hebrews is just so amazing, right? That this exalted Jesus Christ, who is at the right hand of the Father, can relate to me in such a personal way, in such a real way.
Now, think about it and I'm guilty of this, friends, when I'm hurting. And this is not just about sin. When life is hard and I had a fight with my wife and I'm just feeling sad and I'm feeling pressured, I tend to withdraw. And the harder I struggle, the more withdrawn I become, the more alone I feel. And I think that's pretty common. I think I'm not alone in that, in feeling that way, feeling alone. And I don't know, I don't think it's self-pity. I think it's just sort of a natural reaction to withdraw. And this passage assures us that we're not alone, even though we may feel like we are. And it's not that we're not alone and we're hanging out with someone who has no concept of what it is to hurt, what it is to feel rejection, what it is to feel like others see you as a failure, and to be abandoned and let down and pressured and all these other things. We have someone who has experienced all of those things. And beloved, the word here in Hebrews, it says sympathize, and the Greek word, it's really where we get our word sympathize. But when we think of sympathy, a lot of times when I'm struggling, I don't want sympathy. Because the way we use that word, is you feel sorry for me.
Like a pity.
Exactly, and I don't want your pity. I don't want your pity. I want someone who's been through what I've been through. I want someone who can speak into my condition. Someone who's walked that road and can help me navigate that path.
Indeed.
And that's what that word means. It means to co-suffer.
Yes.
Okay? The word has a much deeper meaning.
In fact,
and some translations say empathize, not sympathize.
Yeah, empathize.
Empathy gets us closer to the mark.
Because the word, as I was studying, Chris, it actually means that to feel the same thing that others are feeling.
Yes. Yes.
That's a big deal. Like,
Yes.
that's not just sympathy, as you said, the way
Right.
we kind of use it today. We're saying, oh, I feel bad for this dude. Man, I'm glad I'm not him.
Yeah.
It's like,
Right.
no, I've been there, and I've been through that, been there, done that.
And I'm hurting with you.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
That's what that word means. Jesus is hurting with us. He's there in the midst of your pain, in the midst of your angst and frustration, whatever it is. He's right there in a feelingly way, in a compassionate way. He's co-suffering with you. That's the depth of connection. So instead of running away from you, running away from me in the midst of my mess, no. He just gets down there right there, and his hands are dirty and muddy right there with me, with you, helping you. This passage, beloved, if you really think about it, could be, and some have argued it could be one of the most comforting passages in all of Scripture, that this Jesus, God incarnate, him at the right hand of the Father, who, when John looked at him, fell at the ground as though dead, terrified, commiserates with you, feels what you feel, and reaches out to you and longs to be with you and comfort you as you wrestle with life.
Man, I had this great picture of what the enthusiasm that Jesus has in moving into our lives when we are a wreck. Okay? The picture in my mind is going on like a log ride, and you're just anticipating going down that big hill and going into that plunge where you get covered with the water. You want to go down. You want to go down into that plunge and get covered in it. And Jesus is saying, I'm going to go in neck deep with you, man. I'm going to get submersed in this thing with you. And not only that, I'm going to walk along with you, identifying with it, because I also am a man who suffered greatly.
Right.
And actually, arguably, biblically speaking, we can say Jesus has suffered more than any of us ever could.
Yes.
And that's not just a theoretical thing, but when you start to unpack what Jesus went through, just on the earth, let alone the forsaking of his own Father and the triune Godhead, what he went through. If that man doesn't know how to understand my suffering, I don't know who else can.
That's right.
That dude, he gets it probably better than I do, I would say.
Yeah.
The infinite God who went through that. So, man, Chris?
A few years ago, I was having some problems, and it turned out I had gallstones.
Wow.
And if you've ever had gallstones, you know that they're quite uncomfortable.
Man.
But like a typical guy, I ignored them, and they came back.
Because it just makes them go away.
And I ignored them again, and they came back. And when I was in screaming agony for 8 hours, I finally went to the hospital. And so they check me in, and they have all these doctors and people come in and out of the room, and, well, yes, your problem is clear. You have gallstones. What should I do? Because I didn't know what that meant. I didn't know how to fix the problem. And various I talked to about 3 different doctors, and they're all like, well, it's kind of your decision. You have to make a medical decision that works for you. And the first 2 said that, and the third doctor, he said, I remove your gallbladder. Oh, are you a surgeon? He goes, oh, no, I'm not a surgeon, but remove your gallbladder. He was the only one who said that. The other ones were talking about your options and this and that, and it intrigued me.
So did you ask?
So he just seemed to connect with me in a different way. It was weird. So when I got out of the hospital, I made an appointment to meet with this guy. Okay. I said, look, you were the only one when I was in the hospital said, just cut it out. I said, why did you react that way? He says, because I've been there.
You see?
He said, I don't have a gallbladder anymore. I had gallstones, Chris. And they're awful. And you know what? You're always going to have them. And they can tell you dietary this and things and this and that. Unless you're going to guarantee that you're never, ever going to have any fat in your diet ever again for the rest of your life, just cut the thing out.
So the dude had a sympathy like Jesus, is what you're saying.
He co-suffered with me.
Yeah,
He had
that's like,
gallstones.
he could identify
He had
with that
suffered
suffering.
like that. He had that pain. So he wasn't trying, you know, he understood what it would take to solve the problem. He did. It wasn't like, oh, I just really feel bad for you, Chris.
Let
Oh
me,
my God.
Let me give you some comfort.
Oh,
Buy you a
man,
cup of coffee.
I really feel so bad for you. He's like,
Right.
look, this is the problem. Let me help you get through it.
Right.
This is what you need to get from where you are to where you want to be. He could do that for me because he had been there. And that's what Christ gives us. It's not just feeling bad for us. It's not just even coming down and sitting with us in our suffering, but he helps us along. He says, look, I came through it and I can show you the way.
Dude, I love your experience there because it shows that when this dude said something happened in you and you're like, you know what? This guy's different. He's saying something different. I need to listen to what he's saying.
Yep.
And then you decide after the procedure to go seek this dude out.
Yep.
Right? Because there was something powerful.
There was a kindred spirit. There truly was.
A kindred spirit.
There really was.
Right? And this guy wasn't just some aloof doctor talking about stuff in theory, giving you options. This dude's like, I went through this myself. And that's, the quote at the beginning, I really like that. It's like, look, man, Jesus suffered not just as a Superman, but as a man.
He's a man like us.
Right? With bedhead and pimples at 13.
He wouldn't let me title this podcast, Jesus Had Pimples.
It could have been Jesus Pimple Plus. Right? But I think when we start to truly see Jesus for the humanity that he had, you're right. It changes perspective, right? Because we're so prone to think of Jesus in his glory. Right. I can see him at the right hand of the Father in my mind and in my heart, and see him as so far off, so aloof, so far above,
out of touch,
right?
Out of touch.
And not that that's a bad thing, but we feel left alone. We feel like in a sense, we feel abandoned.
Yeah.
Right? Because
he can't possibly get it. He can't possibly comprehend. He can't understand what I'm going through.
Man.
And this verse tells us, yeah, he does. He really, really does. And he's right there with you, co-suffering along with you. But not just to provide comfort, but to also show you the way out of it, to draw nearer to him.
And that's it, right? It's to make the follow-up visit with the doc. I want to go get with you again, man. Right. I love that. I really love that.
And that's what that passage tells us. It reminds us that Jesus, though he is no longer physically on the earth, he is as present now as he ever was. And he is with you as you suffer. He's suffering right along with you. He loves you that much. He's not repulsed by your sin. He's not repulsed by your pain. It's not. His heart goes out to you to embrace you, to provide comfort to you. Run to him. Go confidently to him right now. Don't wait. Thank you for tuning in, my friends, and God willing, I'll talk to you next week.
We'll see you real soon.